This is a story about the supernatural.
Shelterwood is the land of dreams. If you want to find something here, you will.
This is a story of disappearances and homecomings.
I know your whole world has been turned upside down, but listen, I was really hoping I could convince you not to go back out there.
Investigating the disappearance of my sister, Sadie DeRosso.
I've never heard of anyone coming back, ever.
Subscribe now to Shelterwood, a suburban gothic, to follow this story.
I have been hearing about linen sheets for forever. So I finally made the switch with Quince, and let me tell you, I'm obsessed. Yes, it's Shelby, and these linen sheets have elevated the look of my bedroom, and I honestly don't know why I waited for so long. I'm a hot sleeper, especially now during these warmer months, and these sheets have been a game changer. Quince's sheets are light, breathable, and soft from day one, woven from 100% European flax. It's the perfect mix of relaxed and refined, and it just gets softer with every wash. And linen isn't their only game. Quince has ultra plush duvets, quilts, pillows, and shams too, featuring other premium fabrics like organic cotton, breezy bamboo, and skin-nourishing silk. My favorite part is that Quince only works with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. Level up your bedding with Quince. You'll feel the difference right away. Go to quince.com/SYTS for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/SYTS to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/SYTS. Toxic Avenger fans, tickets are on sale now. Go to toxicavenger.com/podcast and get tickets for you and dozens of your friends to see your favorite radioactive janitor exclusively in theaters. Go to toxicavenger.com/podcast to get your movie tickets now and show the up on August 29th. Welcome to Scare You to Sleep. I'm your host, Shelby Novak, and I'm here to read you a bedtime story. Tonight I have for you a story by Jon Saks, a returning author to the show. This week he has for us Lullaby. If she can't sleep, we can't sleep. It's been a nightmare. Yeah, a nightmare. Having coffee were Nina and Case. Nina, the mother who can't sleep. Case, the friend who finishes Nina's sentences when Nina is too sleepy to finish them. The coffee wasn't helping. The coffee isn't helping. All it did was make her stomach upset. This is just making my stomach upset. Oh, Nina, Case said sympathetically. I'm sure it's just a phase. Nina asked Case if her own child, similar in age, had ever gone through a phase like this. Case started her answer with an optimistic, while tilting her head and looking towards the ceiling. For Nina, this was a classic Case tell that displayed she was about to lie. Yeah, there was definitely a phase where she couldn't sleep. So how did you solve it? Oh, you know, Case said, still lying sympathetically. She just outgrew it. Right, Nina said, before adding, it's just, our kids are the same age, so I'm wondering why mine hasn't outgrown it yet. Right, Case said, nodding, as if facial movements and agreeing were a solution. Outgrow it? Aren't they the same age? They were, Nina said. Are. She corrected herself. They are the same age. 6 is way too old or way too young. You shouldn't be 6 and not be able to sleep. That's the peak sleep age for your entire life. I talked to Freddie. He said 6 was a great sleep age for his kids, all of them. They'd be out for like 10 hours a night. Maybe it's her bed. It's not the bed, Nina said, putting down her book, frustrated, as Glenn got up to sit at the tiny desk tucked away in the corner of their bedroom. And you shouldn't use screens past 9 p.m. I read an article about it. I'll be quick, Glenn told her, tilting his head slightly back, adjusting for the light and his sight. Are you looking up beds? Hun, Glenn started. We're not gonna keep doing this. She wakes up every night screaming. It's not every night, she told him. That she screams. Oh, sorry, Glenn said with an air of condescension. 6 out of 7 nights per week she wakes up screaming. 1 night per week we wake up and she's sleeping in between us. It's not normal. Don't say that, Nina responded. Don't say what? Normal. Our daughter is going through a phase. You make me feel like a bad mom. Glenn turned around while taking off his glasses. Nobody feels guiltier than me, okay? I'm the dad. I'm the one who's supposed to make the bad dreams go away. I don't know what that means, Nina told him. Well, maybe that's part of the problem, Glenn said, turning back towards his Google search of best kids' beds for insomnia. Nina sat up, annoyed. What does that mean? What's part of the problem? Me? Glenn didn't hear her. He just read aloud what he had found. This one is supposed to be top of the line for insomniac children, whatever the hell that means. Such a scam. Should we buy it? There's a Juneteenth sale. Does it matter that we're white? Nina had heard enough. She put her Winston Barrow book on the nightstand and shut off the light on her side of the bed. It was time to get to sleep before the inevitable. Screaming. Nina and Glenn both sat up quickly, hair in a tussle. Glenn kicked his legs out in frustration as Nina put her own pillow over her face and attempted a self-smothering. They rock, paper, scissored. Glenn lost. Stupid rock, Glenn said, before getting out of bed and walking towards his daughter's room. Their daughter, Isabel, was screaming. Glenn jogged into her room asking what was wrong, even though he knew the answer, because the answer was always the same. Nightmares. What was the nightmare, Izzy? The nightmares revolved around the same thing. A man who would emerge from the corner of the room and then reach down for her neck. They tried letting her sleep in their bed. They tried speaking with a child psychologist. They tried changing her diet. They tried breathing exercises. None of it seemed to work. Izzy might have a couple of days with solid sleep, but then it would revert back to the screaming. the piercingly loud screaming of their adorable only child. Glenn or Nina would take turns laying in bed with her until she fell asleep, and then spend the rest of their night laying in a twisted knot of some sleep position that would throw their entire morning off track. When did it start? That was the question everyone had. What was the origin point of these nightmares? Nina and Greg tracked it down quite easily. Her birthday. Her 6th birthday, roughly 6 months ago. It was a lovely birthday. Most of Izzy's class came over. They painted, they ate pizza, they had a scavenger hunt around the house, they had cake, red velvet cake. The birthday was a smashing success. And then that night, screaming. Nina blamed sugar, Glenn blamed bread. The child psychologist blamed poor communication skills amongst her immediate family. Nina did not enjoy that prognosis. Neither did Glenn. The psychologist was not given a follow-up appointment. How dare she blame them? They were loving parents who gave their child everything she wanted. Maybe we give her too much. The natural follow-up. Should they give their child less, be more strict? Easier said than done. Izzy was a cutie pie, got good grades, had friends, a joy to babysit, which was a direct quote from multiple babysitters of various ages. During free time in school, when all the kids drew pictures, Izzy never drew anything remotely dark. Literally, they were bright-colored pictures with big yellow suns, shiny green grass, wide human smiles. No monsters. Except in her dreams. A lot. Tomorrow would be another morning where Glenn woke up with a sore back because Izzy would take up most of the bed. Nina slept well, having a bed to herself, but it was beginning to strain on their marriage. The question that they couldn't find an answer for. "I've got it!" This is what Case said as she grabbed Nina's shoulders from behind while waiting in line to get tickets for a new movie called 50 Shades of Grey. The reviews were mediocre, but Nina and Case enjoyed sneaking away from their children to watch a trashy movie that may contain sex. "You know Katrina, Marisol's mother, with the big hair?" "Yes," Nina said, after hearing big hair. "What about her?" "Me and Katrina were talking at soccer. She said that Marisol has been having a really hard time sleeping for a while, and then," Case said, pausing for dramatic effect, "she found this babysitter who would stay with Marisol in the evening and put her to bed. The very first night, Marisol stopped having nightmares." Nina was intrigued, but skeptical. "How long has Marisol been sleeping well?" "A month and counting," Case told her. "I have her card. Katrina gave it to me." Nina stared at the card, still skeptical but skewing towards intrigue. "She puts her to bed? Why, is that weird?" That was Glenn's first question while pouring himself a second glass of wine after dinner, as Nina told him about this supposed magical babysitter who fixed Marisol. "Is Marisol the one who eats her boogers?" "No," Nina told him as she took Glenn's fresh glass of wine for herself. "Well, maybe she is. The point is, I don't think it's healthy for someone else to put our child to bed, right?" Screaming in the middle of the night for a 5th consecutive night. Glenn pointed at Nina and said, "Rock." Nina knew it was her turn as Glenn rolled over to enjoy the thought of sleep. She did as Glenn had done the night before, Jogging in, asking what was wrong, Izzy told her about the man who would reach for her neck. It wasn't until the morning when Nina woke up with a bad back and thought, okay, let's give this babysitter a shot. Gertrude? So nice to meet you, Nina. She stood in the doorway with an inviting smile. Her snow-colored hair felt vibrant and offset her elderly birth year. She walked inside and seemed to glide across the floor as Glenn and Izzy stood in the living room, waiting to swap introductions. Gertrude locked eyes with Izzy and never wavered until Izzy finally looked up after some persuasion by her parents. They gave Gertrude a little tour of the house. It was a spacious home, no doubt about it. Any house that required a tour in order to give a sense of geography rather than vanity was a clear indicator that the owners were doing well financially. Gertrude soaked most of it in and remained quiet until they came upon a painting she had done that was now residing in the upstairs hallway. Isabella, this is a wonderful painting. Such gorgeous colors. Will you paint something for me one day? Izzy smiled and nodded her tiny, adorable head. Nina and Glenn smiled as well. Their child and new babysitter seemed to have an instant connection. The tour concluded in the kitchen, so Nina could show Gertrude where some of the snacks were. By this point, Izzy stayed in the living room so the adults could speak in private. You know about Isabella's issues with sleeping through the night. I do, Gertrude said. Dreadful. My friend told me you had luck with a previous child, getting them to sleep through the night. Well, Gertrude started. I hope it wasn't luck, but yes, there was a previous child under my care that had such awful, awful nightmares. The things this child would see in their sleep. Glenn walked into the kitchen holding Nina's coat as Gertrude trailed off. Well, you have my number, obviously. We should be back by 10 at the latest. Have a wonderful night, Gertrude told them. So nice when married couples get some time to be alone and remind themselves why they came together in matrimony. Glenn had to look away so as not to laugh. Nina knew this about her husband as he slid open the kitchen door that was adjacent to their long driveway. Thank you, Gertrude. We'll be back shortly. Take your time, she told them, as they walked out of their home and into Glenn's new sob. She seems nice, Nina said once the car door was closed. Nice enough to stay out past 10? Glenn asked with a devilish grin. Let's see how well you behave, Nina told him. They'd been away from their child for only 5 minutes, and already their flirtatious nature was ratcheting up to levels it had not been for years. No phones. That was the rule at dinner, a rule that was very hard to follow considering Isabella's bedtime was 8 p.m., and the parents were salivating over the notion that their daughter might be cured. You look great, Glenn told his wife. You too, Nina told her husband. So nice when married couples get some time to be alone and remind themselves why they came together in matrimony. Be nice, Nina sarcastically scolded him. I've behaved pretty well, just saying. In case you're keeping track. We haven't even finished the appetizers, she responded. Plenty of time for you to misbehave. You used to like it when I misbehaved. The restaurant was packed. Umberto's upscale Mexican was a shared favorite between Nina and Glenn. This was one of the frequent date spots before Isabella entered the picture. It did the trick then, and it was doing the trick now. Battling the conditions known as too much Mexican food, the married couple made a pit stop in a parking lot of a dive bar. That was, once upon a time, a location that made them feel young and immortal. Tonight, it was a place they were pretty sure no one would catch them rekindling their romance. It was delightful, nostalgic, and brief. Nina checked the time, 10:23. Would their glorious date night end on a high note, or have it come crashing back to reality with a screaming child in the middle of the night? Gertrude was quietly reading in the living room when they arrived. The book was small, with a light green cover. They asked how Isabella behaved. "Darling, just darling," Gertrude beamed. "You have a special child in this house." Glenn took out his wallet, and Gertrude put her hand on his. "Oh no, please, this was my pleasure." Nina and Glenn simultaneously pleaded with her to take the money, but she persisted. "That's not why I do this. Money has never been my currency. The smile in a child's eye, that's all the reward I'll ever need." Gertrude put on her coat and walked towards the door. "Can I at least give you a ride home?" Glenn said. "It's cold out. Let me at least do that for you." "Thank you, but I quite like the night. Allows the mind to breathe." And just like that, she was out of their house. Now, the question became, would Izzy sleep? Sunshine. Nina saw sunshine sneaking through her window shades. She sat up. Empty bed. Not empty, just her and Glenn. Izzy? Not here. It worked. Nina began to shake Glenn. He made a gurgling noise. Nina stepped up her wake-up by straddling his back and karate-chopping his shoulders. It worked! Glenn sat up. His bloodshot eyes corroborated his wife's assessment. It had, in fact, worked. Isabella was not in their bed, which meant she had slept through the night. They both got up and started to walk out until Nina reminded Glenn that he was naked. He concurred once again with her assessment and then turned around to put on underwear and a t-shirt. Once halfway clothed, they proceeded towards their daughter's bedroom. There she was, sleeping like an angel. 1 week later, and it started to feel like a bad dream. Those months of not being able to sleep, the screaming, the waking up with back pain, all of it was now in the rearview mirror. Isabella seemed to be none the wiser. It was Nina and Glenn who felt so appreciative. Sitting at the breakfast table, tucked away in the corner of the kitchen, they ate their scrambled eggs. Another quiet morning after a long night of peaceful sleep. Isabella had more energy. Nina and Glenn certainly had more energy. Isabella asked if they could build a snowman. Of course, they told her. She ran upstairs to get ready. Glenn turned to Nina, smiling, and asked, "How did she do it? This woman is clearly a magician. Don't you want to know what she did?" "No," Nina said, smiling, sipping her coffee. "Well, I do," Glenn told her. It took a couple of weeks to track Gertrude down. She was in high demand around town, the child whisperer who could stop nightmares dead in its tracks. Gertrude was elusive during the day. It was only on an off night that he was able to finally locate her whereabouts. sitting on the front porch of her house, over on the edge of town, resting alone on a dead-end road, softly swaying back and forth in her rocking chair, reading that same little book with the light green cover. Glenn brought cookies. If you don't want them, maybe a child you care for would. Oh, Gertrude told him. What a lovely gesture, thank you. Thank you, he said. Isabella hasn't had one nightmare, not one. It's been 3 weeks. You're a lifesaver, Gertrude. Me and Nina had to know. What did you do? What was the cure? Gertrude sat her book down. Glenn, she said, some things are better left unknown. Glenn smiled, nodded, but he couldn't resist. Yeah, but I really want to know. Nina, too. Gertrude paused, staring into his eyes. Do you wish to know the truth about your child? Absolutely, he said without hesitation. Gertrude took out a pen, ripped a piece of paper from the back of her little green book, and started to write something down. It was brief. When finished, she handed him the piece of paper. Glenn looked down at it and then back up at Gertrude. What does this mean? Gertrude sat back into her seat, softly swaying in her chair, opening up her little green book and humming the tune to a song only she knew. Spanish? Nina was in bed when Glenn handed her the note. Not only is it the cure, Glenn beamed, taking off his pants, but it's also in Espanol. She's making our child a dual linguist. This lady is a magician. What does it mean? Nina asked. I don't know, Glenn said. Who cares? It worked. That's what matters. Nina got out of bed and walked over to the tiny desk where the laptop sat. She began to type as Glenn continued to get undressed. The answer sliced her eyes. Oh my God, Nina said. What? Glenn asked. What does it mean? Sleep, child, sleep now, for the cocoa is coming and will carry you away. Sleep, child, sleep now, for the cocoa is coming and will eat you. When Nina turned around, she was no longer in her bedroom. She was in Isabella's, standing in the doorway. In front of her, on the bed, was Isabella, sitting on the edge. Her eyes were translucent, a cloud instead of a window to the soul. Behind Izzy was a clown holding a knife to Isabella's throat.
Choose,
he said softly. Nina was petrified. Her entire body was trembling, frozen with terror. What? She said, nearly choking on her own terror. Once again, the clown spoke softly.
your life or hers. Choose.
Nina raised her palms in surrender. Tears were bursting out of her eyelids. Please, she whispered. Please don't hurt her. The clown very lightly tilted his head down, while his wide red eyes slid up his chalky white forehead. His mouth began to open. A smile, a big, bright red smile.
Choose,
He said, as a noose lowered from above, attached to the ceiling fan. A chair slid out from Isabella's desk. A laugh began to hiss out of the clown's mouth like a venomous snake.
Choose.
His demand echoed and vibrated across the room, bouncing off the walls. The clown tilted Isabella's head backward and raised his knife. No, please. Please, no, please. Nina stood onto the chair. She put the noose around her neck. A puddle had formed at the leg of the chair. Nina's tears were infinite. She was staring down at her child. Izzy, until the clown began to count down.
Tick, tock, 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 tick, tock.
Just as Nina stepped off the chair, Isabella woke up, screaming. You all know how much I love food. I created a whole online group dedicated to how much I love it. I talk about it in every episode. I love a good meal made with great ingredients. Sometimes, though, I have no time to, or honestly, just plain don't feel like cooking for myself. But I am very particular about quality ingredients and meals that are nutritious. That's why I'm so glad I discovered Tempo. Tempo has fast and feel-good single-serving meals that can be ready in just 3 minutes without sacrificing taste or convenience. Honestly, I didn't believe it either when I first heard about it, but I was, no joke, blown away by how good all these meals were. I wish I could show you my text messages when I got these to my parents, because I was just raving about all of them. Like, there was this poblano bacon chicken with this cream sauce. Oh my God. And these sweet chili meatballs. Oh, and this apricot glazed chicken. Oh my God. That wasn't even all of them, but those are my top 3. I still think about them. And each meal was so filling. That's so important to me. So, for a limited time, Tempo is offering my listeners 60% off your first box. Go to tempomeals.com/scare. That's tempomeals.com/scare for 60% off your first box. tempomeals.com/scare. Rules and restrictions may apply.
This is a story about the supernatural.
Shelterwood is the land of dreams. If you want to find something here, you will.
This is a story of disappearances and homecomings.
I know your whole world has been turned upside down, but listen, I was really hoping I could convince you not to go back out there.
Investigating the disappearance of my sister, Sadie DeRosso.
I've never heard of anyone coming back, ever.
Subscribe now to Shelterwood, a Suburban Gothic, to follow this story.
Toxic Avenger fans, tickets are on sale now. Go to toxicavenger.com/podcast and get tickets for you and dozens of your friends to see your favorite radioactive janitor exclusively in theaters. Go to toxicavenger.com/podcast to get your movie tickets now and show the up on August 29th. Wait, Before the ramble, I actually have some bonus content for you as a way to remind you that the $1 tier on Patreon will be expiring at the end of the month, and those who join will be grandfathered in. That is for the ad-free tier, but for the other tiers, I offer bonus episodes. And lately, I've been reading the classic Ted the Caver series. Well, not really a series, but a creepypasta. So here is a sneak peek of that. March 23rd, 2001. Due to the overwhelming number of requests I have received to tell about my discoveries and bizarre experiences in a cave not far from my home, I have created this webpage. I will outline the events that happened to me during the past few months, beginning with my journey into a familiar cave in December 2000, and ending, well, it hasn't actually ended yet. I will use my caving journal as the text to tell about my recent experience. I will give them to you as I experienced them, in chronological order. I have included photographs that were taken during my many trips into the cave. I have also created a few illustrations to help the reader get a better idea of what things looked like in the cave. All of the photos were taken by me, or one of the few people I went into the cave with. I want to point out a few things before I tell about the events. 1. Most of the pictures were taken with a Kodak disposable type camera. I took a better camera into the cave on 1 or 2 of the trips. Pictures on this site are all original photos and have not been messed with or enhanced, other than where noted. As a rule, I get my pictures put onto a disc at the time of developing, so I don't have to scan them later. This ensures the best digital quality. 2. I will not reveal the names of the other people involved in this experience. If you know me well enough, you probably know them already. 3. I will not reveal the location of the cave to anyone for any reason. So please don't ask. I refuse to be held accountable for anyone's life but my own. I will refer to the cave as Mystery Cave. This is not its real name. If you think these events sound far-fetched, I agree. I would come to the same conclusion had I not experienced them. I will try to finish the site as soon as possible. Check the date on the main page to see when I've made updates. To protect myself from people who might want to copy this site, I include the following. All text on this and following pages are my own words and copyright 2001. Ted. I will divide the text into 2 colors for the sake of clarity. The plain text is taken directly from my caving journal. The italicized text is my comment as I reflect on the experience. I will do my best to convey the thoughts and feelings I had during the entire event. I will not use the actual names of the other individuals involved. I will include the entire relevant text of my journal. Only small parts of the journal will I skip. This will only occur when the entry has nothing to do with the experience in the cave, such as eating dinner after a trip, getting fuel or snacks, irrelevant details, etc. My journal is fairly thorough. I will merely summarize what I am cutting out of the actual entry. In an effort to present this experience in as accurate light as possible, I will type my journal as I wrote it, sans grammar check. Please overlook my errors. My additional comments will help to clarify the things I wrote in my journal. Caving Journal, December 30th, 2000. B and I decided to get in one more caving trip before the new year, so we set our sights on Mystery Cave. Not a spectacular cave, but since neither of us had been caving in a while, it would be nice to go to any cave. There was a bit of excitement to this trip. There was a small passage in the lower portion of the cave that I wanted to check out to see if it was possible to get past it. It had a small opening, but lots of air blowing out of it. Even though it is way too small to climb through, I had never even checked to see what was inside the passage. We got our gear loaded up and hit the road by 3 p.m. We got to the cave in great time, since B likes to drive fast. We anchored from the usual tree and began to rappel into the cave. I went down first and got my gear together while B came down. I will refer to B many times. We have been caving together for many months now. He was injured in a caving accident a few years ago and was told he would never walk again. Through hard work and perseverance, he not only walks but can get around very well in caves. The trickier parts of the cave might slow him down a bit, but he can make it. He patiently works through an obstacle until he gets past it. As for the reference to the small opening in the cave, there is a saying among cavers, if it blows, it goes. Meaning, if a passage has a good flow of air, it is probably worth investigating. After we explored all of the usual passages, we climbed down to check out the hole. The hole is located deep in the cave, near the lowest part of the cave. It is on the side of the cave wall, about 3 feet from the floor. To look inside the hole, I had to kneel down to duck under an overhang of rock. First picture, the original opening. I put my glove in the hole for size reference. I used my backup mini mag light and held it inside the hole to see what I could see. I was excited by what I saw. The wall around the hole was about 3.5 inches thick. It led into a tight passage. The passage opened up a bit just inside the hole. It continued back about 10 to 12 feet in a small crawl space. After that, it seemed to really open up. Although how much, we couldn't tell. This could be a virgin passage. Obviously, no one has passed through this route, but there could be a way into the passage from the other side. To even get to the crawl space, we would have to enlarge the opening. Currently, it is about the size of my fist. Once we get past the opening, we would have a tight crawl back to where it opened up. It would take some work, but we thought we could do it. We sat down for a few minutes to rest and contemplate our plan of attack. While we sat there in the darkness, we could hear the wind howling from the other side of the passage. It was a low, eerie noise. We could also hear a low rumble from time to time. No big deal, though. The cave is in the vicinity of a highway that has heavy trucks drive on it. We figured the rumble was the effect of the trucks resonating through the rocks. We determined that our best plan would be to haul a cordless drill into the cave to drill into the rock. Then we could take a bullpen and a small sledgehammer and break up the rock. It seemed pretty straightforward. We would widen the hole big enough to squeeze in and see what was on the other side. The efforts to haul all of the equipment down to the hole would be a pain, but we hoped it would be worth it. I named the passage Floyd's Tomb after Floyd Collins. It seemed to look like the tight spot where Floyd spent his last miserable days on Earth. Picture 2, a rough drawing of how the passage originally looked. Floyd Collins was a caver back in the early 1900s. He got stuck in a tight crawl space and was unable to free himself. It is an amazing story that is detailed in a book called Trapped, the story of Floyd Collins. I think that was the title. I don't recall the author. Calling our passage Floyd's Tomb was not only a tribute to Floyd, but a commentary of the size of the passage. Haha! In retrospect, it is funny how simple I thought it was going to be. I figured a few hours' work and we would be in. Had I known how long it was going to take, I doubt I would have even begun the project. Had I known what I was going to experience in the cave, I never would have returned. We gathered up our gear and headed for the surface. Normally, I couldn't care less if I ever came back into this cave. There's nothing special about it. But now, I was psyched about getting back and getting through. We hadn't even left the cave and we were planning our return trip. The rest of the journal entry talked about the climb out of the cave, our dinner, and our trip back home. January 27th through 28th, 2001. Work begins. B and I were both excited to get back into the cave and get to work. I figured with about 4 hours work, we could be in and see what was on the other side. We had arranged to borrow a DeWalt cordless drill to bring with us. We also had masonry bits to drill with, sledgehammers, 2, to break up the rock, bullpins to insert into the drill holes, and a few other tools that we ended up not using. Getting the tools down to the work site proved to be a challenge. One of us would climb down the rope and stop at a ledge or good resting place, and the other person would lower the tools. We kept repeating this routine until we got to the bottom of the cave. Then we had to drag the tools to the hole. It took about an hour to finally get to work. B took the first turn at the hole. After an hour of exhausting work, we could tell that we were not going to get through in one session. We kept trading off after we worked ourselves into a sweat. One would take a break and get some food and water, while the other one went to work. The routines went like this. To begin work, we had to get down on our knees and do our best to avoid smacking our heads on the ceiling. Working in this awkward position, we would drill into the wall around the hole. That was difficult work. We really had to push on the drill, and it was still slow progress. Then we inserted the bullpin into the hole and hammered on it until the rock broke up. Then we would repeat the process. To give you an idea of how slow it went, the typical size rock that would break off was about fingernail size. If we broke off a large piece about a third the size of my palm, it was cause for celebration. From time to time, for variety, we would just wail on a cold chisel with a 5-pound sledge. It was slow progress. The problem with the sledge was that we couldn't take a good swing because of the tight quarters. Even though we spent hours and several trips working on the hole, we never did find a better technique for widening the hole. The drill/bullpin/hammer got the best results for our efforts. We came up with some crazy ideas for breaking up the rock. Everything from TNT, never seriously considered, to hauling a generator to the mouth of the cave and running an extension cord down to jackhammer. We even thought about using liquid nitrogen to freeze the rock and make it more brittle. After a couple of hours of hard work, we realized what our limiting factor was going to be. It was about then that our first battery met an abrupt death. We had a second battery, so we swapped them out. The second battery lasted a little longer because we hammered and chiseled a little more often and a little longer each time. Finally, after about 3 more hours of drudgery, the second battery died, and we called it a night. Whew! We could tell that we had done some work in the cave, but it was not much. For the first time since we got in the cave, we sat back, both of us, took a break. It was nice to check out the results of our hard work. Then we noticed the howling again. It seemed to be a little louder than the last time we were there. We just figured the wind was blowing a little stronger outside. What we could not figure out was the rumbling. It too seemed to be louder and more frequent. This time, we could not attribute the noise to trucks. The road that the trucks drove on was not very busy to begin with. At that time of night, it should be dead. Yet, the rumbling continued. It seemed to be coming from deep within the passage. B said he would ask some veteran cavers what could be causing the noise. We didn't spend a long time admiring our work. We still had to haul the gear up and out of the cave. Actually, we left some of it in the cave. It was still difficult work. What made it worse was that we were both exhausted. Our original plan was to be done with this cave and hit a couple other caves in the area the next day. Instead, we decided to crash at a nearby motel, change up the drill batteries, and go back to Mystery Cave. Photo number 3. A photo of the opening after our first trip. My journal goes on at length about the night after we left the cave. We got a room. Dinner was excellent. I didn't sleep good, despite the fact I was exhausted, etc. We both slept in, so we got a late start back into the cave. The second day working on the cave went about the same as the first. We worked until both batteries were dead again. We were still not even close to getting through. The howling and rumbling continued as the day before. On caving. Before I continue with the next journal entry, I thought it might be helpful to the reader to explain a little bit about caving and about the atmosphere in the cave. As I reread and think about my description of the cave, I notice that much of the language I use in my caving journal and the descriptions, or lack thereof, assume that the reader has a knowledge of caving and what it is like inside a cave. In other words, I write my journals for me. I will take this time to give a more detailed description of the cave. I will tell about what it was like when we worked on the cave, and I will summarize our feelings up to this point. The cave was discovered several decades ago when construction in the area unearthed its entrance. From that time to the present, it has been visited by mostly locals in the area and avid cavers in the region. Beer cans can be found intermittently in the cave, mostly in the upper half. When the cave was first entered, it was probably beautiful. Dust, graffiti, vandals, pigeons, and regular use have diminished its appeal. There are still places in the cave where small formations remain undisturbed, as a reminder of what the rest of the cave used to look like. To enter the cave, one must have a good length of rope in order to rappel down into the rock. A nearby tree serves as a good anchor point. Once the rope is tied to the tree about 20 feet away from a small cliff, it can be tossed over the edge of the cliff to a small ledge 15 feet below. Cavers can then descend the short distance to the entrance. Once inside the cave, artificial light must be used. My light source of choice is a battery-operated helmet-mounted light known as a TAG light. Safe caving calls for at least 2 sources of backup lighting. For my backup lighting, I have a mini mag light mounted to my helmet, and another helmet-mounted light in my pack, which I always carry with me. I also have glow sticks that I carry with me. These are not considered good sources of backup light by some, but they are good to use for taking lunch breaks, and they could be used to get out of a cave if the other sources fail. After a short climb over large rocks, the caver comes to a large pit. The same rope is used to reach the bottom of the pit. The drop is only 50 feet or so, but it is not free hanging. In other words, you can't slide straight down the rope, which is preferable. You have to snake your way around sharp rocks as you descend. The ascent is made more difficult for the same reason. The pit varies in diameter from about 10 feet to 3 or 4 in a few places. The walls are lined with a sharp white rock called popcorn. Let me correct that. It used to be white, but is now covered with dust and dirt that was kicked down from above by years of caving. The popcorn makes it painful to brush against the side of the pit. My choice of clothing is Levi's, t-shirt, gloves, and knee pads. I usually leave the cave with a few scrapes, but at least I am comfortable when I climb around inside. The temperature is stable year-round. It feels cool in the summer and warm in the winter. We have gone in on freezing days, and 10 feet into the cave, it is warm enough that coats are not needed. It is a good temperature to work in, as we learned. For this size drop, I usually use a figure 8 descending device. For the climb up, I attach myself to the rope using a Petzl ascender, but I climb up on my own without using the device. It is there merely as a safety attachment in case I slip. Other cavers have their own methods of getting down and up. At the bottom of the drop, the caver gets to do some crawling for a while. There's a small room about 6 by 6 feet at the bottom that gives the caver a spot to leave his harness and descending/ascending gear. Since there is no more steep drops, the harness is not needed and will only get in the way. Once the caver gets down to the 6 by 6 room, he can take a break under the ledge while the rest of the party comes down. Then, he must drop to his knees to negotiate a 10-foot-long passage that is only a few feet high. This is where the knee pads come in handy. The floor is covered with a soft dirt intermingled with bits of broken rock from above. The thin layer of dirt does nothing to soften the blow to the hands and knees as the caver works down the crawl space. As a reward, at the end of the crawl, he gets to drop to his belly and scoot under a tight squeeze. Not really tight, just something low enough to make the caver scoot along in the dirt. Once the caver gets on the other side of the squeeze, there are a few feet of crawl space. Then the cave opens up enough to stand. For most of the rest of the caver can stand, or at least stoop. The cave splits off into several passages at this point. 2 routes wind around the rocks and crevasses and come to abrupt dead ends. The other 2 lead to small pools of water. Each route is fun to explore. They all lead on for 100 feet or so in a gradual downward slope. Most of the time, the caver can walk upright in the passages. Other times, he will have to climb over large boulders or occasionally crawl on hands and knees. Water is a common occurrence in caves. I have been told that one of the local residents was one of the first people in the cave, and his cousin dove into the pools using scuba gear. He said the cave continued down for a couple 100 feet underwater. What they were hoping for, and what happens frequently, is that the passage comes up somewhere else, with virgin cave passages to explore. Unfortunately, I don't possess the knowledge to give more detail about the types of rocks in the cave. When we were drilling, we would have some parts that were easier to drill than others, and there were different colors in the rock, referred to the photos taken in the cave. But that is the best I can do to describe the makeup of the cave. At the point the cave splits into 4 routes, the 2 passages that dead end are to the immediate left of the caver. Straight ahead and to the right are the passages that lead to pools of water. The entrance to the passage on the right is the largest of the 4. The arched opening rises nearly 10 feet in the air, ending a mere foot below the cave ceiling. As the caver enters the passage, the ceiling gradually lowers until it is about 6 feet high. It continues at this same height for the 40 feet that the passage travels in a continuous direction. This section of the cave resembles a hard rock mine, its arch nearly perfect and the floor flat and easy to walk on. It's easy to picture rusty mine cars on rail lines and dust-covered miners with blistered hands gripping dull picks. The pseudo-mine comes to an end, and the caver is once again forced to drop onto hands and knees and get reacquainted with the floor of the cave. This time, the crawl lasts about 20 feet. The floor is sloping gently downward for the first half of the crawl. Then it gets fairly steep and slippery. Able-bodied cavers can still cling carefully down the slippery slope. When I go with B, I carry the end of the rope that we use to get down to this point. I usually need to tie another short length of rope to the first rope to make sure he can use it to reach the bottom. The crawl lasts a few feet beyond the bottom of the slide. Over the next 10 to 12 feet, the caver slowly begins to regain the standing position. After walking a few feet and climbing down a short drop-off, the caver arrives at a small level area, which has a passage leading down immediately to the left. The passage ends 75 feet later at one of the small bodies of water. To the right is a rock wall. Straight ahead is an indentation in the wall which goes back about 3 feet. On the wall at the rear of the indent is a small hole, about the size of a softball. To get near the hole, the caver ducks under an overhang and kneels upon the rocks that rise above the floor by a few inches. By the time the caver reaches this point, he is either warm or sweating, and the first thing he notices is the cool breeze blowing out of the hole. It was my recognition of this hole as a potential doorway to unexplored portions of the cave that ultimately led to this telling of my experience. As has been my tradition for all the years I've been caving, the party reaches a point in the cave, usually at the deepest part of the cave, that all lights are extinguished. Complete blackness fills the eyes. For a moment, the individual caver strains the eye muscles, focusing in and out with the expectation of catching a crumb of light somewhere in the false night. After several futile moments, the caver turns his head at a sound, perhaps another caver, only to have the other senses return, and then heighten. The sounds, smells, and feelings that have been overlooked to this point come racing to the caver in perfect detail. The pain of their own behind sitting on the cave floor, the smell of dust, sweat, guano, the sound of modern material shifting on age-old rock as cavers attempt to find comfort on this solid foundation. At the back of every caver's mind at this time is, what if? What if a person had to climb out of the cave with no light? Would he make it? Would he find all of the turns and bends which got him to this place? If not, would a rescue party find him in time? The depth of darkness recognized at this time is something that is rarely experienced outside a cave. Many first-time cavers erroneously declare that they have to hold their hand to within 2 or 3 inches of their face before they can see it. The truth is, the human eye is incapable of seeing in an absence of light. If they did not hear something coming toward them, they would feel it before they saw it. Complete and total dark. This exercise is a great way to remind people to take backup lighting. As we proceeded to work in the cave, we developed a system pretty early and little changed in succeeding trips. The first time in the cave, B took first shift at chipping away at the opening. After about a half hour, he needed a break, so I took over. He told me what worked best, and I continued doing the same. We would try new things from time to time, to use new muscles, but usually stuck to the same method. We would use the masonry bit and press on the drill as hard as we could and drill out a hole in the rock. Safety glasses and dust masks were worn while working. Then we would insert the bullpen and hammer it into the rock and break out small chunks of the cave. Then we would drill another hole and repeat the process. Occasionally, the drill would hit a soft spot in the rock, and that step would be shortened. We would work until we became too tired to continue. Then B and I would trade. While one of us was working, the other would remain in the darkness and either eat or drink, or just lie down on the cave floor, padded by rope bags. After a few rotations, we were tired enough to catch a nap while taking our break. The only light we used was the helmet light on the head of the worker. Since it was pointing toward the hole, the resting person was left mostly in the dark. This was a welcome benefit, since the resting person was usually, resting. The rest break was also a chance to cool down a bit, which didn't take long in the cooler temperature of the cave. Fortunately, the temperature of the cave allowed us to work pretty hard and not overheat much. I remember that I frequently looked in the hole and thought, hey, it's big enough, I think I can squeeze through, only to be disappointed in my attempt. However, even after the first attempt and failure, I knew that I would keep working on the hole until I got through. This, despite the fact that I knew it would take many more hours of hard work. It actually became an obsession with me. I tried to get out to the cave and work as often as I could. I hoped that the passage led to a larger, undiscovered cave, that we would be the first ones to enter. I guess the explorer in me wanted to find a new frontier there in the cave. Since B is such an avid caver, he was motivated by the same desire to find a new, unexplored cave. What we did find was not at all what I expected. Thanks for listening, and thank you to those of you on the normal feed for listening to my little bonus of Ted the Caver. And for those of you who are listening from Patreon, you can access Ted the Caver right now if you're on the bonus episode tiers. And thank you to Jon Saks, my author this week. If you'd like to follow the show, you can follow it on socials at scareyoutosleep. If you'd like to follow me personally, you can follow me at Shelby B. Novak. If you have a story you'd like considered for the show, please send it to scareyoutosleep@gmail.com. And a reminder that I will be at Midsummer Scream next weekend, all weekend, so please come by the Bloody Disgusting booth and say hello. I will also be moderating the panel Bloodlines, the Evolution, Psychology, and Legacy of Gore in Horror Cinema. I'll be co-moderating that with my buddy, Michael Rothman, and the panelists are very impressive. It is Greg Nicotero, Nick Castle, and Sandy King Carpenter. So excited for that panel, a little bit intimidated because those are some big names that I highly, highly respect. So please come out and see that if you're going to be in town for the convention. And again, I will be at the Bloody Disgusting booth on and off, and I'll probably spend most of my time there. So please come by and say hi. If I don't happen to be there, feel free to, whoever is there, let them know or ask them where I am or something of the sort, and they can probably let you know when I'll be back. Or if I'm, standing in line for a Diet Coke, and you can go say hi there, whatever it may be. But I'm so excited to see some of you out there next week. And for Baking Corner, I actually went to visit some friends last weekend. Well, I went over to their house to watch Jaws. I didn't go out of town or anything. And I brought a lemon supreme pie. And I've talked about the lemon supreme pie on here before. It's such a great summer dessert. It's a no-bake pie. There are components you have to cook. It is like the lemon curd for the top you have to cook. I guess, though, you could probably get away with just buying a jar of lemon curd. And then it's truly a no-bake, no-cook at all pie. And I also like to bake my crust, my graham cracker crust. A lot of the recipes have a regular crust, but I mentioned this pie before, and some of you were like, I bet that'd be good with a graham cracker crust. And guess what? You were all right. I switched it over and I started making a graham cracker crust. And that's all for Baking Corner. I've just been really busy getting everything together for Midsummer Scream. And if you want more of me, remember you can check me out on the Bloody Disgusting podcast every week, which is also on YouTube if you'd like to see my face for some reason. I don't know why, but if you would like to, it's there on YouTube. And that comes out weekly every Wednesday. We also have a lot of bonus episodes over there, and we have another one that will be coming out soon. So check that out. And I believe that's all for this week. I will let you go, and I'm going to go and drink a lot of water. My allergies are killing me today. I went on a really long walk this morning, very, very early, and didn't take my allergy medication. And I feel like I inhaled fiberglass insulation. That's what my face feels like right now. I feel like I just snorted lines of it. So I'm going to go. And I hope you have a fantastic weekend. Again, I really hope to see you next weekend. I will have an episode next weekend. I'm going to pre-schedule it. So don't worry about that. There will be an episode next weekend. And my Toxic Avenger episode comes out soon, which will be on this feed and the Toxic Avenger podcast feed. So look out for that. And it's very exciting. Again, it is a very different tone than this show, but it will be coming out on this feed. And yeah, I'm very proud of it. I'm very excited about it. And if you see me at Midsummer Scream, I have some Toxie stickers for you. We also have Bloody Disgusting stickers we're going to be giving out, and merch and all that jazz. So please, 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 please stop by. Okay, I'm going to go and drink some tea and water. You are going to go and do the same, or you don't have to do the tea part. You can just do the water part. Go get some sleep. Sweet dreams.
This is a story about the supernatural.
Shelterwood is the land of dreams. If you want to find something here, you will.
This is a story of disappearances and homecomings.
I know your whole world has been turned upside down, but listen, I was really hoping I could convince you not to go back out there.
Investigating the disappearance of my sister, Sadie DeRosso.
I've never heard of anyone coming back, ever.
Subscribe now to Shelterwood, a suburban gothic, to follow this story.
Toxic Avenger fans, tickets are on sale now. Go to toxicavenger.com/podcast and get tickets for you and dozens of your friends to see your favorite radioactive janitor exclusively in theaters. Go to toxicavenger.com/podcast to get your movie tickets now and show the up on August 29th.